You may have heard that every hero can work if you just play them well enough. Well, Crazy Raccoon, the best team in the world, managed to disprove this theory, and did so spectacularly. You might think that this is a video about counterpicking, but actually this has nothing to do with counterpicking at all. Crazy Raccoon legitimately just played the wrong heroes at the wrong times, which allowed for NTMR to become the first Western team to beat a Korean team in the OWCS. This match started off as expected, with Crazy Raccoon running circles around NTMR on Ilios. This is Crazy Raccoon's signature map pick after all, and one that they rarely lose on. This was a struggle of a map for NTMR, and they decided to try and force Juno Lucio backline with Hazard after Crazy Raccoon banned Brig, and this just didn't work whatsoever. On the second round, NTMR became desperate, with Kuffa swapping over to Ramatra. There wasn't really a plan here for NTMR, they were just doing whatever they could try to slow down and stop the ball composition. Everything failed. None of this was a surprise. Crazy Raccoon are the most consistently strong team in the world. They've never dropped a map to a Western team in the OWCS, and if they do drop maps, even in the Korea region, they usually drop them to Team Falcons. NTMR beating Crazy Raccoon wouldn't just be an upset, it would be absolutely outrageous. NTMR, on the other hand, are the leftovers of North America. Team Liquid and SSG swooped in and stole most of the desirable players. NTMR, as a roster, formed at the last moment, and they have a total of 0 Korean imports. These are the players that, to put it bluntly, nobody wanted. That didn't stop them though, as they clawed their way through the lower bracket in North America, beating every top team in NA to reach the Hangzhou LAN. NTMR were able to take down Team CC in the first round. That wasn't a surprise. Team CC were considered the weakest team at the event, but what happened next, after NTMR's loss on Ilios to Crazy Raccoon, would go down in OWCS history. King's Row was the map pick from NTMR, and this was a pretty solid choice. This is one of the few maps where Junbin, the primary tank player for Crazy Raccoon, is subbed out in favor of Max. The reason Crazy Raccoon typically run Max on King's Row is because D.Va is very strong, especially on the first point. Junbin just can't play D.Va, so it makes sense to bring Max in. NTMR's first ban is genius though, because they immediately reduce the effectiveness of D.Va by banning Ana, especially for the first point. This one ban is going to be very important and relates a lot to the title of this video. Don't worry, I swear I didn't clickbait. Crazy Raccoon banned Ramatra. They want to avoid letting Kuffa force a Ramatra mirror, but he still has the Hazard up his sleeve. Hazard performs very well as a bit of a fill-in for D.Va on first point and can outperform her on the remainder of the map if played well. The composition from NTMR while rolling out is really interesting. Lethal is on Hanzo, and if you didn't know, Hanzo is incredibly uncommon. This isn't some new meta though, it's a set strategy for the first point of this specific map. Hanzo, on this first point, can push high grounds a bit easier and can apply a ton of pressure to Crazy Raccoon's backline, and specifically Lip's Ashe. None of this really matters though, since Lip is cut like a deer in headlights and instantly taken down by Lethal at the very start.
Wow, we're actually seeing Lethal on Hanzo. Oh, and it works! Okay, well, I was going to question it for a second there, but I'm sorry, I didn't know you game like that.
Now, Crazy Raccoon are forced into a 4v5 situation, and then Shu, who's on Brig, makes a move that in a normal match would be worthy of an all-out crash out. But to be completely honest, it gets so much worse later on. For absolutely no comprehensible reason, Shu drops off the high ground while NTMR have all of their cooldowns and are full HP. Shu then misses his whip shot and dies on the spot. There is the possibility that Shu was attempting to bait a dive from Kuffa to get his cooldowns out, and he was just going to go for a whip shot, then bash away. But I just don't really think this was the correct time to go for that. It was really risky no matter if he hit the whip shot or not. There are opportune times to drop, and this just wasn't one of them. Regardless of the sanity of that play, let's talk for a moment about the fact that Shu is even playing Brig in the first place. One of Crazy Raccoon's favorite backlines in this map is Ana Juno, especially for the first point. NTMR banned Ana though, so my theory is that Crazy Raccoon were a bit lost because of that. Shu is not a Brig player. Brig is generally part of the main support player's hero pool, not the flex supports. Chorong plays Brig for Crazy Raccoon 99% of the time, so why is Shu on Brig here? Well, we figured that out very quickly when Shu swaps over to Zen for the second point. Zenyatta is part of the flex support hero pool, so Shu is the Zen player on the team. Here's my personal theory. Ana was banned, so Crazy Raccoon needed to come up with a strategy last second. They decided they wanted to put Shu on Zenyatta for second and third point, but wanted to stick with Brig Juno for the first point because it is a more effective defensive composition to hold on to the high ground. Normally, Chorong would be on Brig and Shu on Juno, but they decide to flip-flop so that Shu can swap from Brig directly over to Zen. This means that Chorong can hold on to his ult charge on Juno. Now, that might have sounded really confusing, and you might also not be familiar with flex and main support, and that's okay. TLDR, Shu was on Brig so Chorong could save ult charge, and the flex and main support hero pools exist so professional support players don't have to learn every single hero. The roles have nothing to do with healing output or utility. They are based on meta patterns in terms of which supports tend to work well with each other. Also, Juno is a flex support, but she's really easy to learn and works well with other flex supports such as Ana and Kiriko in some situations, so most professional support players can run Juno. That's why Chorong, a main support player, is totally fine playing Juno here. Nothing like a good old support roles conversation to confuse the hell out of an average Overwatch player. Now, this Zenyatta pick is unfortunately one of our two heroes that allowed Nightmare to win this match, so let's talk for a moment about Zen. He's normally played on maps with longer sightlines, such as Havana or Circuit Royale, and that's because Zen is a glass cannon. To put it simply, Zen's job is to make sure his opponent never gets close enough through raw damage output. If Nightmare closed the distance with their hazard composition, Shu's Zenyatta is sure to die near instantly. The problem is that King's Row isn't exactly one of those maps with longer sightlines, with one exception that we will talk about later. King's Row, especially the second point, has plenty of high grounds from which Xera's Genji can flank from to kill Shu's Zenyatta, and the corners are also pretty close to each other, which means Shu can't create much distance between himself and Kuffa's hazard. The end result? Crazy Raccoon began to play what I like to call S-Key Simulator. Nightmare understand how Crazy Raccoon need to play their Zen composition, so they take full advantage of it. We often think of winning in terms of winning actual team fights, but here, Nightmare win without obtaining a singular kill. Everything Crazy Raccoon do must be within Shu's line of sight, otherwise they are taking a 4v5, so Max's D.Va can only contest the cart for a moment before backing away. Nightmare focus on one thing, pushing the cart. They play very slowly and avoid taking poke, and as the cart moves forward, Shu's Zenyatta must move backwards, the S key. Kuffa's hazard threatens Crazy Raccoon with a slash, and then Xera on Genji pushes up and uses his deflect to further threaten Crazy Raccoon and push the Zenyatta back even farther. Nightmare have used up their resources, and after Shu hits a volley on Kuffa's hazard, Nightmare fall back and pretty much go AFK to wait for their cooldowns. Shu on Zen backs up to the right side to try and find an angle, but this is a really tight spot that is difficult to deal damage from. Kuffa slashes to pressure Shu and scare him away, and Nightmare resume their cart-pushing endeavors. You might have realized it by now, but Nightmare have essentially won a fight because of how much they've pushed the cart, and they are now one fight win away from taking the second point. Crazy Raccoon didn't make any mistakes by playing around Shu's Zenyatta and continually backing up. It was just that Nightmare didn't make any mistakes in return, and they focused on pushing cart rather than fully chasing Shu's Zenyatta and taking the bait. And if Nightmare don't mess up, they can just get card progress for free, and there is absolutely nothing Crazy Raccoon can do about it as long as they're on Zen. 0 ultimates used, 0 players dead, and that's a fight win for Nightmare. For this final stretch on second point, Zenyatta is finally a bit easier. The sightlines open up a lot more for Shu, and he has the ability to play farther back without having to turn a corner and break his line of sight. This is where Nightmare finally commit their first ultimate in an attempt to close this distance, with Ultraviolet using a Speed Ring and Orbital Ray. This catches Max's D.Va. He was contesting cart and stayed for just a little too long, allowing Nightmare to punish him. Crazy Raccoon know they need to trade, so Lip uses Bob and Chorong uses Orbital Ray. These ultimates were used from a distance though, and they were relatively easy to kite for the majority of Nightmare. An excellent Speed Ring from Ultraviolet allowed Kuffa in particular to leap away and get behind cover in time. Isong flies over the rooftop and manages to assassinate Lethal with a barrage, keeping Crazy Raccoon in the fight. Kuffa then narrowly misses his downpour that was aimed towards Lip's Ash, so Crazy Raccoon's backline would live to see another day. To ensure a contest, Shu uses his Transcendence, and Admiral, in a moment of pure unluckiness, also uses his Rally simultaneously. It would have been better to hold the Rally until after the Transcendence was used. Admiral makes another mistake, choosing to bash Max's D.Va instead of using the bash to disengage. This leaves Admiral isolated, resulting in his death. Zera's Genji was able to trade Lip's Ashe, but this wasn't going to be enough, since Nightmare exhausted their entire ultimate bank. Nightmare are forced to back off and regroup, but they are now only one fight away from reaching the second checkpoint with over 3 minutes on the clock. This is a great position to be in, and it's all thanks to Shu's Zenyatta. Now, I think it's important to understand that the Zen isn't useless, and Nightmare understand this. Both teams lack ultimates. I'm not really counting Diva Bomb since that's just a second life for Diva. Crazy Raccoon are very comfortable in neutral fights that lack ultimates with their Zenyatta because it becomes very difficult for Nightmare to close the distance and reach the Zenyatta without losing a few players on the way. Nightmare can't get the checkpoint for free, like the space before, because the sight lines are so long, so Shu's Zenyatta can play in a safer position for this final section of the point. This leaves Nightmare with only one option. They need to charge their ultimates so that they can avoid a neutral. Kuffa's Hazard, through the main choke, uses soft hits to take damage and charge up Ultraviolet's orbital ray. Soft hits, otherwise known as soft engages, are where you will place pressure on the opponent and use your cooldowns such as Leap to do so, but you don't fully commit onto a backline target. Soft hits are great for charging key support ultimates since they allow you to avoid exploding and dying instantly, but still allow you to place pressure on your enemy and also allow you to take damage as well. If you want to try this for yourself in ranked, this is actually really easy to do as a tank player, especially on common dive heroes like Diva, Hazard, and Winston. While Nightmare charge their ultimates, Zera's Genji controls the right side lane to prevent Hisang's Pharah from taking an angle and ambushing Nightmare's backline. This is also a good spot for Zera to build up a bit of blade charge, and if he ever needs healing, Admiral's Brig will provide him with a pack. The Brig is usually the most focused on healing the DPS, while Juno is a bit more focused on keeping the tank alive. Once Ultraviolet builds the Ray, Nightmare make an awesome play. Ultraviolet and Lethal split off from the rest of Nightmare, and Ultraviolet on Juno uses his Speed Ring and Orbital Ray to ambush Crazy Raccoon from behind. Zera's Genji comes from the right side over the rooftop, and he's able to dash through Hisang, with Lethal obtaining the final blow. There's no way Crazy Raccoon can fight the orbital head-on. All that Shu Zenyatta can do is keep backing up, which leaves Max's Diva to get the touch. He has to sacrifice his Diva Bomb, but Max is able to buy a bit of time for Crazy Raccoon. Admiral got a little overzealous and tried to kill Max in his Baby Diva form, but lost his life in the process. Shu is able to deal insane amounts of damage from this inaccessible position in the very back, and Nightmare are struggling to find any kills. Their ult bank is completely empty. Unfortunately, Crazy Raccoon do make a bit of a questionable decision here. Chorong decides to use his Orbital Ray after Max's Diva falls low, and this catches Zera's Genji when Nightmare attempt to kite it. Unfortunately for Crazy Raccoon, they traded this ult for absolutely nothing, and likely didn't need it to win this fight. Nightmare have another chance. Oh yeah, Hisang also decides to just decimate Kuffa with this barrage, which is a little questionable. Sure, you get a stagger kill, but is it really worthwhile giving up an ultimate for the final fight, even if it is as weak as barrage? I'm not really sure about that decision. Well, either way, Zera places a few shuriken on Shu's head and then decides to go for an insane hero play, killing Shu and then going for a blade on Lip, only to be shut down instantaneously.
이렇게까지 확실하게 보내버려야 어쨌든 들어올 때 코스트 때려 슈터.
Although that was a bit of a throw, I feel that it shows confidence, especially against a team as scary as Crazy Raccoon. Zera wasn't going to play as safe as he could to try and put out a decent performance. He was playing to win. Ultraviolet drops the Speed Ring and Nightmare brute force it through the main choke. Only Lethal swings around the left side to take an angle. Kuffa uses his downpour, which locks Shu in place for a moment, but that doesn't do much else. Zera immediately locks onto Hisang, dashing over top and then hitting 2 key right clicks to secure a nasty kill. When Lip commits Bob, Admiral uses his rally to cancel it out and stabilize for Nightmare. When Max's Diva falls low, Shu's Zenyatta comes in with Transcendence to assist. Ultraviolet uses a perfect speed ring to allow Nightmare to kite, and then in a perfect demonstration of ebb and flow, Nightmare push right back in with their overclock. Max's Diva is the first target. If Crazy Raccoon lose their tank and can't contest, then Nightmare get the checkpoint either way. Max loses mech, and Zera finishes off the baby form. Although Hisang gets a trade on Admiral, Kuffa is able to delete Hisang, and so Nightmare have broken through the second checkpoint. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a place where Zenyatta is sometimes picked on this map and is viable, and that is for third point defense. There's one issue though, he's only good for the second half of third point, because there he can play from distance by the spawn doors. Shu stays on Zenyatta, so that means Again, Crazy Raccoon need to sacrifice a ton of cart progress on this third point unless Nightmare makes a mistake. Fortunately for Crazy Raccoon, Nightmare do make a mistake, with Ultraviolet dying in a bit of a freak accident. He exploded almost instantaneously. Lip hit a headshot, and then Heesung immediately hit a direct afterwards for the kill. Ultraviolet just needed to be a little more conscious of where Lip in particular was positioned to avoid that initial headshot. This kill provides enough time for Chorong's Juno to build up to Orbital Ray, a key ultimate for Crazy Raccoon. This time, it's Crazy Raccoon's turn to make a mistake though, and they actually make a big one. They decide to try and play aggressive and swing into Nightmare. Take a look at this frame. There is only one player who isn't in this frame, and if you guessed that it was Shu Zenyatta, you would be correct. He is off of the screen to the left. Meanwhile, Crazy Raccoon are trying to push into Nightmare's backline, who are kiting around this corner. Crazy Raccoon are breaking the golden rule of Zenyatta compositions. You must do everything within the Zenyatta's line of sight. Crazy Raccoon are throwing themselves into a 4v5 head first and leaving one of their most valuable assets in an almost useless position. Even if Shu were to push up more before Crazy Raccoon went for this engage, that would just make him an easy dive target. He doesn't want to be there. This is simply a bad idea to begin with. The only reason this plan from Crazy Raccoon got any value at all was because Heesung's Pharah was able to kill both supports in Barrage using Chorong's Orbital Ray. And you know what the best part is? Nightmare still win. If you didn't notice, Lip also used Bob there at the end out of pure desperation, yet another mistake that Crazy Raccoon will come to regret. Really though, taking that fight in the first place was an absolutely terrible idea. Now, Crazy Raccoon have only Trance to deal with Lethal's Overclock and Admiral's Rally. Lethal uses Overclock, and for some reason, Max drops directly in front of Nightmare and attempts to DM the damage, only to find himself stranded and dead after a few seconds. There was no reason to drop here. Lethal used Overclock before Max dropped, and even then, Max probably shouldn't drop here anyways. He should have at least waited for his boosters to be available before he drops. And now for the moment that likely started Coach Moon's legendary crash out. And I'm not even joking here, he was really upset, and I honestly can't even blame him. Respect to Moon for treating his players well and not losing his temper though, because after seeing Shu pop Transcendence for Max's Diva, who had already lost mech, he likely wasn't feeling the best. By far, the funniest part of this play is the fact that Shu stays in there the whole time, even though Max already lost mech. This is absurd because Max is dead no matter what you do, and by staying on cart with Transcendence, Shu puts himself in a position where he will die too. And that's exactly what happens. Shu stays for too long, attempts to get out at the last moment, and is cut out by Nightmare. That was all Nightmare needed to fully capture King's Row.
자, 이러면은 사실상 3점이 거의 부담이 보입니다, 나이트메어. 그렇죠. 뒤쪽 파운드라서 위에 이어서 중간까지 뽑아내는 제로. 들어가겠네요. 와. 예. 볼 끝까지. 결국에 3점 확보합니다, 나이트메어.
Crazy Raccoon had fumbled hard, and they were under enough pressure that they decide to completely switch things up, going to Mirror Hazard. They run the Kiriko Lucio variant, which makes sense, especially for attacking the first point in its high ground positions. Nightmare run the Brig Juno, same as before, and the Brig makes sense for defending those high ground positions. And can I just say that the addition of Juno really added a lot in terms of compositional variety? It's a treat to have two entirely different backlines that are both uniquely valuable in their own way. The fight begins with Crazy Raccoon aggressively pushing the high ground, looking to clear Nightmare's backline. In turn, Zera's Genji looks to attack Lip's Sojourn, but loses out in the duel. Nightmare keeps themselves in it with a good backline rotation, and Max's Hazard attempts to chase Lethal's Sojourn, but he fails to connect and ends up stranded. Admiral on Brig bashes in there and does as much damage as he can, knowing that Max is a sitting duck for a few seconds. In a hilarious turn of events, Max jumps out of the hotel right when Shu's Kiriko TP'd in to save him. Kuffa kills Max, and then Shu attempts to escape, but is chased down by Admiral. Somehow, the whip shot from Admiral hits Chorong instead of Shu, which saves Shu, but effectively puts an end to this fight for Crazy Raccoon. This round is Admiral's round. You'll see what I mean as we go forward. Admiral starts on the high ground, a good position to jump off from if he wants to help a teammate, and a good position to deny Crazy Raccoon the high ground from. Lethal on Sojourn sits below him, and when Max's Hazard leaps in to try and kill Lethal, Admiral manages to save Lethal with 2 packs alongside his AoE Inspire healing. Max had committed just a little too far with his engage as well, and he had no way out. Admiral finishes him off with a whip shot, and Nightmare take the second fight on this first point. The first point of King's Row, if you couldn't tell already, is pretty complex positioning-wise, and this goes for the attacking and defending teams. You rarely see mirrors on King's Row first point because there are so many ways to play it, and so many viable strategies that might only apply to attacking or defending. I would argue that how a team plays King's Row first point is a good indicator of how prepared a team is, and it is also a good reflection of the effectiveness of the coaching staff for any given team. I could probably make a whole video on King's Row first point alone, but I digress. During that fight, Zira died, again, and Nightmare won't have the time to reset and get back to their defensive positions before Crazy Raccoon engage. This leaves Nightmare stuck in the main choke and in a relatively vulnerable position. To combat this, Nightmare wrap around the hotel and try to take a flank to retake some space on the map. This whole play doesn't work out too well, but Admiral's aura is enough to convince Shu to use Kitsune, and then Kuffa's downpour just barely catches Chorong, and so he gets scared into using Beat. I don't think this beat in particular was necessary, but I can see why Crazy Raccoon would just want to take the guaranteed fight win so that they can get through the first point.
비트. 웃겼네요. 예. 물바에 궤도까지 와야 되는데 궤도 전에 컵파가. 자, 그리고 방안으로 파고들어서 기상 남자. 네, 어드미를 잡혀서 이거는 균열이 날 것 같죠? 예. 결국에는.
After the first point, Admiral swaps over to Lucio, and this makes a lot of sense. Juno Lucio was the preferred backline back when Hazard was hard meta, because Lucio is a little better at living against Hazard and can also participate in dives a lot easier. I am oversimplifying a bit, but to put it simply, in the Hazard mirror, he's pretty strong. Oh yeah, also Nightmare don't need to play SQ Simulator, they can actually take fights before the end of the point. And as you might guess, this is going to make their lives a lot easier. Zira obtains a nasty pick on Chorong for Nightmare's second point defense. Chorong was just straight up diffed. After that, Nightmare can easily buy a bunch of time by holding the cart at the first choke point. After Crazy Raccoon regroup, they finally make their move with ultimates, using Kitsune alongside a flanking blade from Hisung. Zira responds with a blade of his own, taking Chorong's Lucio down and also forcing Lip's Sojourn away. Ultraviolet, on the side of Nightmare, was split off and dies as a trade for Crazy Raccoon. Zira won't let up, trading back in favor of Nightmare by taking down Hisung. Nightmare are up by 1 player and loop back around to stop the cart at the first corner. All that Crazy Raccoon got from that fight was a little bit of cart progress, and not much at that. Crazy Raccoon might be making more mistakes than usual, but they are still Crazy Raccoon at the end of the day. They take a very clean fight here, opening with Overclock. This shot from Lip onto Zira is disgusting. I don't even know if this was on purpose, but either way, Crazy Raccoon definitely take this fight. But here's the problem. Crazy Raccoon just used 3 ultimates for Nightmare's 2, and guess what? Nightmare stopped the cart early enough to allow for a recontest on the second point. They have a second chance that Crazy Raccoon simply didn't have. Crazy Raccoon take the next fight in an even more aggressive fashion, rushing down Nightmare's backline, not giving them a chance to breathe. They are able to kill both Lethal and Ultraviolet, leaving Nightmare down their backline. When I was watching this, I thought Nightmare lost the fight. I even said, that's it. But that wasn't it, because Nightmare's frontline was still alive and healthy, looking for trades. In a legendary hero play, Admiral wraps around on a flank and catches Chorong, who was already low, and then he manages to finish off Lip, granting Nightmare 2 trades, making this fight even. That's the power of Lucio Genji dives. Zira dropped in and dealt a lot of the initial burst damage, and Admiral was there to help finish the kills. This is why teams choose to run Juno Lucio over Juno Brig. Having the Lucio as an aggressive asset is very valuable, it's not for the double speed. Admiral may have died at the end of this play, but he saved the checkpoint. Nightmare managed to stabilize and force Crazy Raccoon to reset. Nightmare almost had it here, but they slipped up with their ultimate usage. They opened up the Overclock and Orbital Ray, and then also had to use Blade just to finish off Chorong. 3 ultimates for 1 kill wasn't going to be enough. Hisung uses Blade and punishes Zira, and then Max hits his downpour through the wall on Lethal, who is left a sitting duck against Lip's Sojourn. Crazy Raccoon stay in the game, but only barely. Unfortunately, to start out, Lethal is picked off early by Lip in the Sojourn duel, so Nightmare must commit their beat and go aggressive to try and trade out. Chorong uses his beat in return, so this endeavor at least forced some resources out of Crazy Raccoon. Eventually, Crazy Raccoon win this fight, but not after Admiral gets his 1 and after Kuffa gets a pick on Shu. Because Nightmare took an early fight, just like the second point, they will have another chance at defending. Unfortunately, Crazy Raccoon have their Kitsune and Nightmare remain with nothing. But this is where Nightmare legitimately make a beautiful play to take the map. Shu uses his Kitsune. It's a little far back, but it can still get the job done. The problem for Crazy Raccoon is that they fall right into Nightmare's trap. The Juno Sojourn backline for Nightmare are set up at the farthest point near the spawn doors, so when Max leaps in to try and kill them, well, he can't. Nightmare are safe near spawn. Turns out going after Kuffa's Hazard instead, the one who can contest point, would have been a bit of a smarter decision under these circumstances. Lethal and Ultraviolet safely sit in spawn. This is the same exact way Zen is supposed to be played on this map, which Shu never took advantage of. Kind of ironic, right? Nightmare wait out the Kitsune, and then re-engage with the Overclock, and there's nothing that Crazy Raccoon can do.
남은 시간은 17초. 리셋 여기까지 바로 갑니다. 리셋 구멍이 전에 뚫어야 돼요. 리셋 구멍이 전에. 그래서 잠깐만요. 품아요. 예. 이제 여기 끝나고 오버클럭. 바로 끝났어요. 오버클럭. 클리닉인데 크레이지가
Oh, he's saying, gets his head ripped clean off his shoulders, and now we're in OT. Max is also dead. Nightmare on their map pick take down the Titans.
Nightmare do something that no team has done before in the Overwatch Champions Series. Crazy Raccoon lose their first map ever to a Western team.
This was the first time Crazy Raccoon had ever lost a map to a Western team in the OWCS, but this was simply a dent in the armor. Surely they wouldn't drop another map, right? Crazy Raccoon sub Jumpin back in for Max for the tank role, and then they pick New Queen Street. Their initial ban is Hazard. The Hazard from Kuffa is clearly a concern for them. Nightmare then banned Lucio in return. This Lucio ban was likely aimed at forcing a Juno Brig mirror in a Brawl mirror, but Crazy Raccoon end up on a ball composition, so it is unclear if the ban had any major impact on Crazy Raccoon's plans for this map. Lip decides to do what every tier 3 hitscan DPS player loves to do, and lock Soldier 76 for absolutely no reason. This character is so funny because I don't think I've seen him work in an official since Overwatch 1. My last video is most literally a player locking Soldier and running it down because he wanted to lose on purpose to get a better seed. This is, of course, our second hero that helped Nightmare upset Crazy Raccoon. I'm not going to analyze this map. This is now a live crash out. Nightmare started out by making the critical mistake of walking out of spawn on the wrong composition. Jumpin smacks Kuffa off the map like a bowling pin, and Nightmare spontaneously combust, but not before Lip Soldier is also sent flying off the map at Mach speed, resulting in his first death this map. Nightmare thankfully realizes that they are on the wrong composition and swap over to a Winston dive composition. If you were actually wondering, no, Nightmare didn't really make a mistake there, they just got a bit unlucky and were probably expecting a Brawl composition from Crazy Raccoon. They swapped as soon as they could, so it's all good. Do you know who doesn't swap? Lip, and he's on the Soldier 76 character. Nothing could go wrong. Lethal on Sojourn opens the fight with a nice shot on Hisong, who was caught completely off guard. Lip then gets his one good play and wins the hitscan duel with Lethal, keeping Crazy Raccoon in the fight. Lip is going to run around and poke for a bit, so while he does that, I'll very quickly explain why Soldier isn't played anymore. Soldier isn't necessarily the worst hero in the game, he isn't even the worst on the DPS roster, but the problem is that he is always worse than his counterparts. The additions of both Ashe and Sojourn in particular helped make Soldier completely irrelevant. The problem is that Soldier lacks effective burst damage. He can deal consistent primary fire damage, but struggles to finish kills compared to Ashe, Sojourn, and Cassidy. He also lacks utility and struggles to live through dives, which means Lip Soldier will have to play very far away from Nightmare to try and avoid getting dove in the first place, kind of like how Shu Zenyatta had to play super far away on King's Row. Once you get dove, you're already dead, and here's yet another death from Lip. Honestly, this one was personal. Zira had no need to pulse him like that at the end of the fight, but he did anyways. Crazy Raccoon have nearly secured the objective, but need to make one final push. Shu decides to nano Lip and go for the classic nano visor. And funny enough, this play demonstrates basically every issue with Soldier in one go. Lip isn't able to kill anyone with this nano visor because he lacks burst damage, and when Kuffa is nanoed and dives him, he can't reposition, and so Crazy Raccoon used their Kitsune as well to try and pocket the hell out of Lip to keep this fight going. Kuffa survives this. Yes, he lives, and then Admiral bashes in and forces Lip away, leaving Crazy Raccoon with a massive 3 ultimates used and 0 kills gained. And oh my goodness, like, what are we doing? Lip survived that hit, so he backs off and plays slowly, looking for some poke while the rest of Crazy Raccoon returned from spawn. He misses his Helix, his only form of burst damage, and then frantically attempts to escape Kuffa's Winston dive. Shu just barely saves his ass by sleeping Kuffa, but in turn, Nightmare just kill Crazy Raccoon's backline, leaving Lip all alone. Even if Lip lives, the rest of his team probably won't. Lip is able to finish off Kuffa's Winston, but that means nothing because he gets his ankles broken so severely that he shoots himself in the face with his own Helix rocket. Like, this wasn't even on purpose. What the hell is happening? And somehow, Lip does not swap off of Soldier. 63% ult charge for Visor of all ultimates is just not worth keeping whatsoever. Please swap off. Lip plays at maximum range this fight and spends most of this fight tickling Nightmare from a kilometer away, only to lose his 1v1 against Lethal Sojourn, even after hitting the direct with the Helix rocket. I think this goes to show how much more consistent Soldier's damage really is. Lip convinces himself that this Visor will surely be the one. The voices are fully in control at this point in the map. We are halfway in and he is committed. He wraps around on the right side flank trying to find any amount of damage, but he just can't secure any kills, and all he can do is chip at Nightmare while staying out of range of Kuffa's Winston. Nightmare pop overclock and are able to obtain 2 separate kills while Lip sits in Narnia. At this point, he's pretty much just letting Crazy Raccoon take 4v5s every fight. He's not an active participant. And only after 3 players on Crazy Raccoon are dead in the spawn room, while all 5 members of Nightmare are alive, Lip pops his Visor and he dies. He deservingly dies. Now, my thought was that this was finally the moment Lip realized that Soldier simply wasn't the play, and that he was just using his ultimate to try and get a stagger kill because he was gonna swap anyways. But no. Lip walks out of the spawn room. He walks out of the spawn room on Soldier. Like, how is this even real? Nightmare they took the lead. We completely wasted ult, and we are still on Soldier. Lip walks out, pokes a bit as always, and the moment he takes an even slightly aggressive position, he gets nailed by a railgun shot and combusts on the spot when met with Kuffa's Nano Winston. And only then, did Lip finally break free from the voices and realize that he was absolutely tossing this map and swap over to a real hit-scan hero. In a twisted and honestly hilarious turn of events, Lip ends up getting farmed while sitting far back in his own backline. He avoids the initial pulse bomb from Zira, but is nailed by a perfect nade from Ultraviolet's Ana, poked down by Lethal Sojourn from across the map, and then finished off by Zira's Tracer. You can't make this up. Next fight, Ultraviolet nails him with another nade, and he's just sent right back to the spawn room again before he even has a chance to breathe. Zira lands a beautiful pulse on Chorong's Brig, and although he attempted to rally to live, he pulled the trigger way too late, eliminating a key ultimate for Crazy Raccoon. The fight is back and forth in Shu Nano's Lip to prevent him from dying to Kuffa, and Heesung lands a pulse of his own on Admiral's Brig. In the cleanup, Lip finally gets his second final blow of the map on Lethal. In what might be the most insane pulse bomb block of the year, Jumbin swoops in and, by chance, catches Zira's pulse bomb that had been aimed at Lip. The targeting from Zira was perfect, and if he hit this pulse on Lip, Crazy Raccoon would lose their only ultimate overclock and be doomed to lose. This takes Get Down, Mr. President to a whole nother level. But there was one small problem. Crazy Raccoon forgot about one important thing.
넘어갔어요. 진짜 리비 해야죠. 리비. 그렇죠. 상대 주창을 빠졌고 본인들 주창으로 해야 되는데, 자 펄스 따라서 들어왔고, 네. 자 리비 해야 됩니다 진짜. 자 상대 제라
This is going to get triggered. A stick. Okay. Sarah doesn't get anything with that pulse bomb just yet. Oh, they have touch! No way! What?
이게 안 되네요. 이게 D9이 나왔어요. 보이냐? 이게 우리다. 나이스메어. 바로 고발 들어가네요.
I think everyone was surprised when this happened. It looked like Crazy Raccoon might be able to turn things around with their overclock, but honestly, even if they did, they still needed to get through a checkpoint and win yet another fight, which wouldn't be easy in their position. Nightmare won that. Lip running the Soldier was definitely a throw, but Nightmare were legitimately making good plays on top of that. The final map would be a good test because this time, Crazy Raccoon weren't going to run troll compositions. The only advantage Nightmare have is the mental advantage. For the first time, Crazy Raccoon were scared, and they were off their game. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying the video, and the best thing you can do to support me is simply leave a comment and engage. These videos sometimes take way too long to make, sorry about that, but I also have no sponsor for these videos, so any support helps. I also stream matches live, including the Nightmare vs Crazy Raccoon match, so make sure to check out my Twitch and my second channel over on YouTube. Back to the game. Crazy Raccoon get to pick a map now, and they go with Route 66, a popular map for dive teams. This allows Crazy Raccoon to play Winston, and forces Nightmare into a situation where they must mirror dive. Momentum is important in a match, and Nightmare vs Crazy Raccoon is a great example of that. Crazy Raccoon don't throw in this map with a silly hero pick like the previous two, but their coordination is off, they're mentally weakened, and they might just be beatable. Nightmare's chance is now.
미나브가 완성하는 크레이지. 나이트메어는 사이드도 강하고 끼어들기 좋은 형태고 시야는 빨아들이기 좋은 형태. 그래도
I feel like the posture there from Nightmare was incorrect. Their setup, they were set up in a way where they were too far back.
맞습니다. 이런 상황 또 오늘 계속해서 리스타일 선수가 이렇게 변수를 만들었거든요.
He's pissed. Like you said, he wants to win. They're not used to losing. Ultraviolet's going to make it a little bit difficult though. Couple of kunai headshots from the Kiriko. Where are you going? Where are you going, Jubbin? Zero, by the way, too. Just an unbelievable Tracer player.
와우! 와우! 야, 이러면 위기 관리 개성공! 나이스요! 오! 이상 벽 살고 있고 집결 누르면서 더 이어가면 되는데! 드리블! 큰일 났는데요? 초록 밀어있고 슛까지!
It's majestic. Come on, get the kill. Yes!
But Jumpin just gets completely blasted.
There is a minute to go. And Crazy Raccoon, they got it next to Big Girls. They haven't even got the point.
They're still getting picks.
Okay, rally from Chorong should be enough. Should be enough to push through. That was a really good recontest though. That's all the ults. They forced everything. They got everything. Now they have ult advantage. They just gave themselves ult advantage for next fight. It's beautiful.
근데 이게 결국에는 준비를 살렸으면 모르겠는데 뚫어줄 선봉장이 지금 없잖아요. 마이 갓.
But this is looking like a Crazy Raccoon cap here on second. But oh boy, was it a nail biter. Overtime, which means there's only a minute and 30 now to push to third.
That's also something you have to consider, that when you're playing against a team like, you know, Falcons or Crazy Raccoon, it's very easy to get into the mindset of, oh, we're just not going to win. But now, Nightmare, I think they know that they can win. I think they know that they can win, and they're playing like they know that they can win.
Next with the stick! Zero does it again! Shu and Liv dead! Their chance to hold, it's just greater and greater by the second.
스킬을 너무 썼어요. 그러다 리플 정리 완료. 딜러 없어요. 막았습니다. 나이스요. 거의 다 막았습니다. 자, 슛까지 끊겨지고 준비. 방울이 빠졌기 때문에 그냥 슛을 걷어내고 점사하면 되거든요. 네. 슛 걷어내면 돼요. 아, 슛 거쳤어요. 그런거 위험해요. 야, 빈대기 없이 역행 빠졌습니다. 그리고 다시 한번 차오른 펄스 폭탄 눌러주면서 2점에서 막아줍니다. 야, 제로!
It's not even just Crazy Raccoon mistakes anymore. And I think that says a lot. Sure, the soldier on New Queen Street, that's a massive throw, or, you know, sure, Crazy Raccoon were kind of like throwing with their fights on King's Row, and they were taking weird fights, doing weird things, but, you know, remember when I said on King's Row, when Zero went for that blade, and, you know, he just instantly died, and everyone was already dead? And I said, hey, like, I prefer that confidence, because at least I'd rather take a player who's willing to go for the play. This is kind of what I mean.
Nightmare capped this first point with barely any resistance.
Shu just wasted Kitsune. That's point.
recover, taking a whole heap of damage though as he dives in. Yes, succumbs to jump in. Look at that bubble positioning, Rose. No healing offer that could connect. But what does connect? The pulse box. Zera finds Chorok and Lethal finds Shu, so again their payload can just keep moving. Heesang's defending it right now with his life, but Zera's just gonna chase him down.
또 중요하긴 하니까요. 자, 일단 준비 완료. 이거 나이트메어 미나요. 홀딩다리. 방울 마지막 발 때. 기상도가 됐어요.
The Suzu's used. Pulse doesn't land, but Lip's dead. Nightmare, they've done it! Nightmare, they did it. They beat Crazy Raccoon in an impossible series. In an insane upset. The biggest upset of OWCS history. Right here. Nobody thought they would win this match. Nobody thought they would have a chance. I thought this would be a 3-0. I thought this would be a 3-0. I can't even say that I thought any differently. This was one of the most important and impactful matches in Overwatch history. At the start of the OWCS, it was clear that Korea was far ahead of North America and Europe. And honestly, North America was a bit of a joke at the start. Only Toronto Defiant, a team with 2 strong Korean imports, was consistent throughout the season. Nightmare, on the other hand, have 3 Americans, Zera, Clear, and Ultraviolet, alongside a few international students, Kuffa from Australia, Admiral from Estonia, and Lethal from Turkey. This win was so unbelievable that afterwards, plenty of fans accused Crazy Raccoon of match fixing by purposely losing the game against Nightmare to try and avoid Falcons in the bracket. Of course, these claims are absurd, because there is a double elimination bracket. Unfortunately, people are still holding on to this accusation though, so let's actually think about this for a second. If Crazy Raccoon, for some reason, decided that they want to hide a strat by avoiding playing Falcons in the upper bracket, and subsequently threw against Nightmare, would that actually be worth it? No, it wouldn't, because Falcons, the upper bracket team, gets the first map pick and ban in the Grand Finals match. This advantage allows Falcons to win the first map in the Grand Finals, and it also allowed Falcons to avoid playing Ilios straight off the bat, which is Crazy Raccoon's best map. If anything, losing to Nightmare hurt Crazy Raccoon more than it might hurt a different team, because they are locked out of playing their best map, which is a control map. And, that locks you out at least at the start of the match. Crazy Raccoon did not actively throw on purpose. They likely just overestimated Nightmare with that soldier strat in particular from Lip, but Nightmare were just better that day. This would be the last match that Nightmare would win in Hangzhou. By defeating Crazy Raccoon, Nightmare locked down 3rd place, but they lost consecutive matches against Team Falcons and Crazy Raccoon. Both times, it was a 3-0. Crazy Raccoon were much more prepared the second time around, and I might make a video on that at some point. They completely changed how they approached maps like King's Row, and it was actually quite clever. After the tournament, the contracts for Nightmare's players expired. Nightmare only signed their roster for 1 stage, so the players could choose to leave. It was likely that Nightmare wanted to keep the roster, but probably didn't have the funds on hand to offer a competitive salary. The players could ask for more because of their excellent performances in North America and Hangzhou. Zera went over to Team Liquid. He proved that he is a valuable up-and-coming flex DPS, and that secured him a spot, and probably a higher salary as well. The rest of Nightmare were signed by GK, and WMIMON was signed to act as the new flex DPS player for the team. That roster is doing quite well right now, having recently taken down SSG 3-1. As time goes on, North America will continue to improve, with Europe close behind, and we might see a Western team win a LAN event sooner than you think. Sorry for the long wait on this one. I had to look for an editor halfway through, so it was a bit of a scuffed process. I might also be very busy soon due to some life stuff, so the next one might take a bit of extra time as well, and I apologize for that. I'm making big steps in my life right now, such as buying my first car, so I really appreciate the support. It wouldn't be possible without all of you. Thank you.